Hello, welcome everybody. Today is the fourth week for the Total Weight Loss Center's presentations. So today I'm proud to introduce Becky Hager. She is a registered licensed dietitian with the Total Weight Loss Center. So I'll give it over to her.
Thank you, Linda. All right, have you guys all attended the 3 prior weeks here then? Okay, wonderful. Well, as Linda said, my name is Becky. I've been with North Kansas City Hospital for 6 years now. So I've been with the bariatric center that whole time. Can you guys hear okay? Okay, so I'm excited to kind of wrap up our 4-week series today. So we're going to kind of put everything together today. Our topic will be thriving in a healthy lifestyle. All right, and I just wanted to review a little bit. Doesn't look like it's going from slide to slide. Let me try it this way. So it is on mine, it's just not on the big screen.
That's weird.
Should I do this maybe?
We'll click on that.
There we go. All good. Okay, sorry about that. Technology. So our topic today will be thriving in a healthy lifestyle. But I just wanted to review kind of what Jackie, one of our dietitians, spoke about 2 weeks ago. The importance with nutrition, getting those 3 protein-centered meals in every single day, kind of focusing on what we call those 2 Ps, that protein component and that produce component at our meals. And when we're choosing those carbohydrates in our diet, remember choosing those smart carbs. So those are carbohydrates that are going to contain some fiber to keep us satisfied for a longer period of time, better stabilize those blood sugars throughout the day, and really help with that heart health too. So that would be your whole grains, your fruits, vegetables, different beans and legumes. Okay, and then as you learned from Dr. Harris's presentation last week, we know all about those habit blasters now. So making that habit that you're wanting to change attractive or desirable, making it an obvious one, making it easy so you're more likely to succeed in doing that, and make it something that will be satisfying to you as well. All right, so today's objectives, we're going to talk a little bit more about meal planning and preparation to give you some easy ideas of how to expedite that process. We'll also spend some time talking about dining out. We'll talk a little bit about beverages and those liquid calories. We'll go through some techniques for how to be a more mindful eater at our meals, and then we'll end today with a little bit of exercise information. So meal planning, why do we think that we should meal plan? Any ideas? Or maybe less likely to drive through that drive-through on the way home from work, perhaps at the end of a stressful day, if we have something waiting in the fridge for us? Yeah, there's a lot of good reasons to meal plan. Number one, it does save quite a bit of time and money if we can plan ahead and eat at home rather than dining out. When we're dining out, we know we're probably getting bigger portions, which means more calories, more fat, more salt in our diet than we typically would have if we had a meal at home. And it really encourages those family dinners. And even if you have kids or grandkids, we know that there's a lot of benefits of sitting down at the table together. So how do we go about meal planning? Well, I always recommend starting small. If you're someone that eats out for every single meal of the week, let's start with 1 meal per week that we can meal prep for. I like to, with my patients, use a blank calendar. So we'll get out a blank calendar for the month and we'll go week by week and we'll just say, okay, what's coming up this week as far as activities with the kids or get-togethers where we don't have to meal prep. Maybe we know that we have a game on Tuesday and Thursday night. We won't be home for supper to plan for that. Maybe on Saturday, we're going out to a birthday party at a restaurant. We don't need a meal plan for that day either. That kind of condenses it and makes it a little bit easier and less days to plan for. I always like recommending too to keep it simple. So maybe you rotate 2 proteins throughout the week. Maybe you picked up a rotisserie chicken at Sam's Club and you've got some frozen salmon patties in the freezer and you can rotate those. And then adding some veggies, then it doesn't have to be anything exciting. It can be a steamer bag of vegetables. It can be just some raw vegetables that maybe you have with hummus or a vegetable dip. It could even be something as simple as a low sodium canned vegetables that you warm up in the microwave. So we're all about keeping it easy. Well, when we're meal planning, that means we also have to make a trip to the grocery store most likely, and that can be a little overwhelming as well. There's lots and lots of information out there. Probably the biggest information tip I can tell you is try not to shop when you're hungry. When we're starving and we're looking at all that food in every single aisle, pretty much everything looks pretty good and we want to grab it. I also recommend keeping a little Post-it note, maybe in your pantry or inside one of your cupboard drawers. So throughout the week, you can kind of accumulate a list, and that way you're more likely to stay on track when you go to the grocery store and avoid those impulse buys. I also like recommending to stick with the outer perimeters at the grocery store. That is generally where you're going to find your produce, such as your fruits and vegetables. You're also going to find your meat counter back there, where a little bit more healthier options are kept. And you might even consider some online grocery pickup or deliveries now. Instacart's a pretty good one that can be used at various grocery stores. Even Hy-Vee has a pretty good delivery and pickup as well. And then once again, you can stick to that list of what you put in that cart. When you're buying your produce at the grocery store, I always recommend buying in season. That's going to be when that fruit, vegetable is at its peak ripeness, and also going to be a little bit more affordable. So this is the time of year we're going to find a lot of that produce in season. Also, the richer the color, the more antioxidants that are in there. That means just it's a healthier option for you, more nutrient dense. If you're shopping around the deli or meat counter, try to stick with that lean protein that Jackie spoke about a few weeks ago. So remember, the less feet that animal has, the less bad fat it contains. So fish is a great option, that poultry with your chicken and turkey. If you're going to go for that red meat, try to choose those leaner cuts like the rounds and loins that'll have a little less fat in them, that saturated fat. And watch those processed meats. So watch your salami, sausage, bacon, brats, hot dogs, where we have a lot of fat in there, but tons and tons of sodium we really don't need in our diet. If you're in the frozen aisles, those fruits and vegetables are just as good as those fresh ones are, generally less expensive, and they'll generally keep a little bit longer too. You know, we may buy a pint of strawberries and then they kind of sit in the fridge and they start molding before we get to them. Well, if we do the frozen berries, we can use those throughout the entire month and we don't have to worry about them going to waste. I always recommend too, if you're buying fresh fruits and vegetables, try not to put them in those fruit and vegetable drawers. We call those the RIP drawers. They usually die before we end up opening them back up and get through them. So put them front and center where you can see them in sight. And then when you're shopping those center aisles, just be aware of those canned items. If you can do a low sodium option or no salt added, maybe canned in water versus oil, that'll be a little bit better option for us. The cereals can be a little bit tricky too, a lot of sugary cereals out there, but in general, if per serving we have 3 or more grams of fiber, that's a pretty good option in terms of that blood sugar control. So also when we're meal planning, kind of the how is trying to use one ingredient for back-to-back meals, or even consider doubling the recipe so you can enjoy those as leftovers either throughout the week, or you can freeze those and have it next month so you don't get tired of eating the same thing day after day. So in the examples above, we see maybe we grab that roasted chicken or maybe we prepare our own at home. We can use those chicken breasts for a meal. Maybe the following night, we make that into some chicken enchiladas, shred that chicken up. And then maybe, you know, the broth or stock we can use in a soup or to make some rice risotto the following night. Or if we pick up some pinto beans, black beans, this could be canned, or you could do the ones that you soak overnight that are in the bags dry. Maybe you have cornbread and beans one night, followed by some bean burritos. Maybe you add some to a stew to pack up the fiber and a little bit extra protein, and then have the rest, puree them as a refried bean side dish the following night. So I wanted to talk a little bit about simple swaps as well. So there's a lot of carbohydrate heavy entrees out there. So I wanted to go through some options to maybe swap that carbohydrate with more of that non-starchy vegetable that you learned about. So I first wanted to talk a little bit about spaghetti, a pretty common entree. Does anyone utilize anything in place of your regular white noodles at home? Spaghetti squash. Yeah. Do you end up roasting it in the oven, or do you just put it in the microwave? Yeah, it's super easy. It saves a lot of time. Those take a while in the oven. That's great. Anyone else? Okay, whole wheat. Yeah, so we're adding some fiber. It's not going to impact our blood sugars as much that way. Absolutely helps with that digestive tract. Oops. I'll show you a few examples here. The zoodles are pretty popular right now. So zucchini noodles. It's not going to go to my page, is it? It's a tricky one. Well, I'm doing it from current, resume.
This is page 1.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. Sorry about that. I'll limit my clicks here. I found a spiralizer out there that will do angel hair pasta. It'll make your regular spaghetti. It'll turn them into some fettuccine noodles. Maybe you want to do some lasagna noodles. I've seen people do that with eggplant too. So a lot of options out there that can increase that vegetable intake, which then typically decreases our overall carbohydrate content. Burrito bowl, obviously there's a lot of rice in those burrito bowls. If you've ever been to Chipotle, for example, riced vegetables might be an option. So like the cauliflower rice, they also make rice out of broccoli that you can either prepare at home, or good old Green Giant has tons and tons of those in the freezer section of different rice veggies. They even have some medleys. So if you're not a big cauliflower person, you could have other vegetables into it too and turn it into a little stir fry. Deli sandwich. So if you've ever been to Subway, we know there's a lot of bread on that 6-inch or foot long. So some options to maybe get away from all that bread might be doing a lettuce wrap. Jimmy John's has a pretty famous one, their unwich, that they have on their menu. That's pretty good. Also using like a bell pepper. So opening it, cutting a bell pepper in half, scraping out all the seeds inside, and then giving a little crunch to your lunch that way and increasing your vegetable intake. I also put this one up here. Jimmy Dean's has one of their eggwich, where you take away the croissant and basically the eggs are the outer portion of the sandwich, and then you've got your sausage and cheese inside. So some definite easy options that you might even have at home in the fridge already ready to go. Tacos, pretty easy one there. We can make that into a taco salad. Maybe some taco boats, whether you use some butter leaf lettuce or even zucchini boats, where you scrape out the inside of a zucchini and put all your taco toppings in there. And you can always cook the zucchini ahead of time, roast it in the oven or grill it, and then add the toppings, put it back in there for a few minutes to melt that cheese. And you've got a lot more vegetables that way too. Your typical burger and fry, obviously that's pretty carb heavy with all those potatoes and that big bun on that big burger. So you might consider a lettuce wrap. A lot of restaurants now are doing the portobello mushroom in place of the bun, which is an interesting one if you're a mushroom fan. Maybe we swap those French fries for a side salad or some steamed veggies. Or maybe we forget to ask for that prior to the meal. Maybe we just take off the top of the bun, right? And decrease our carbohydrate that way and just eat the bottom of the bun too. Last one I wanted to talk about is those chips. So as a bariatric patient, a lot of our patients have kind of that craving for something crunchy and salty after surgery. And they're always saying, what can I have in place of that darn potato chip? Well, believe it or not, there are lots of different chips out there. There's fruit ones where you have like your apple chips or maybe some plantain chips. We have beet chips, zucchini chips, kale chips. Those Parmesan crisps are pretty popular right now too, which isn't a vegetable, but basically they've taken Parmesan cheese and they've made it into a chip. So lots of ways to still get that crunch without the carbohydrate and all that salt in your typical potato chip. Also, if you're someone that typically dines out for your lunches throughout the work week, you might consider packing a lunch. I put some really easy options on here that includes minimal preparation. Back to that rotisserie chicken, maybe we have that with a bagged salad kit that you can find in the store that has the dressing and all the toppings within the salad. Maybe we grab some celery, chop it up, spread some Laughing Cow cheese on there and top it with some maybe buffalo tuna for a little spicy option. Maybe you're running out of the house and just grab a couple boiled eggs and pair that with some raw veggies and hummus. Maybe we take that leftover chicken from the night before and grab a steamer bag of vegetables and, you know, we steam that at work and have some leftovers for the next day of those vegetables too. Or an easy option, take that string cheese, wrap some deli meat around it, maybe add some lettuce after that to wrap it up together. You've got a pretty protein-packed meal that way as well. So definitely doesn't have to include taking your whole Sunday out to meal prep by any means. So what happens when we do dine out? Obviously, that's something we enjoy doing. It's entertaining. We're usually with friends and family members that we enjoy. Some of the biggest things that we can recommend is trying to look at the menu ahead of time before you go, if so. A lot of restaurants now have their menu online that you can look at and say, okay, here's some good lean protein options for me. Here's some easy sides that, you know, will include those vegetables in my diet. Also, a lot of restaurants now have kind of a healthy section that are generally a little bit smaller portions that focus a little bit more on those leaner protein and vegetables too. And then think about eating the same portion that you would at home too. So maybe that means as soon as our meal arrives, we ask for a to-go box and we slide half of that meal in the to-go box. That way, as we're conversing and nibbling, we don't suddenly eat the entire plate of food when we didn't need it. Or consider sharing an entree too. There's some big portions out there at restaurants, and we typically would be satisfied with just half of that too. And that'll save you a little bit of money too. This is kind of as a graph over the past 20 years of how those portions have changed. And it's kind of eye-opening for sure. You look at your typical burger 20 years ago versus now, we're getting an extra 300 calories in that burger. Went from 333 calories up to 590. Coffee, obviously coffee is a big thing for a lot of people. 20 years ago, you had a little 8-ounce cup of coffee and maybe added a little splash of whole milk and sugar. Now you can get your coffee thousands of different ways and a larger volume and a lot more added sugars, which we'll talk a little bit later about today too. So you can see underneath each of those food items what you would have to do to burn kind of that additional calorie. So for example, with that plate of spaghetti, we went from 1 cup to at least 2 cups. We'd have to go clean the house for 2 hours and 35 minutes just for that additional amount of spaghetti we've taken in with those calories. So quite eye-opening. We can also decode the menu when we're dining out. So as you're looking through that menu, these are some words that will kind of tell you that this is a high-fat cooking method. So if we see things like fried, crispy, scalloped, au gratin, creamed, buttered, stuffed, pan-fried, these are generally not the best options. So instead, try to choose those ones on the lower fat cooking method options. So maybe you're getting something that's been baked or broiled, boiled, steamed, grilled, poached, roasted. That'll generally save you quite a bit of calories there and that saturated fat as well. Also, don't hesitate to ask your waiter to make a special request too. Just keep it simple. So maybe you say, I'm gonna get this salad with the grilled chicken and oh, can I get the dressing on the side? That way you're in control of how much you're using. Or maybe, you know, I wanna substitute those fries with a side salad. Maybe hold the cheese on that. Little things like that to kind of keep you on track with your healthy eating. Also, when you're dining out, really try to be careful with a couple different things. The first one, just kind of those beginners that arrive to your table or those appetizers. So maybe that means as soon as we sit down, if we know we're gonna get a basket of chips or a loaf of bread, maybe we tell the waiter to refrain altogether from bringing those out, or maybe we say, can we wait until our entrees come and then bring those out? And then we haven't eaten, you know, an entire meal worth of bread and chips before our meal arrives. Desserts, maybe consider ordering one dessert that the whole table could share versus each person getting their own dessert. Generally, they're pretty big portions to begin with. And then those buffets. These are a tricky one because patients or people who go to a buffet usually want to get your money's worth, right? So I would try to limit your presence at these, or if you do go, maybe go to, get some salad or veggies before you fill up on that main entree, and try to limit to maybe 2 trips using the smaller plates versus the larger ones to help you out there too. I wanted to talk a little bit about just some speedy dinner hacks that you might try at home too, as we're doing that meal planning and prepping. There's a lot of kitchen appliances out there now. We talked about like the zoodles earlier with the spiralizer, but even like a rice cooker or pressure cooker, the Instant Pot, can really help speed up the process of cooking a meal at home. Does anyone have one of the pressure cookers? Do you like yours? Yeah, it's really nice. So basically this takes, any food you can think of and decrease the amount of time that you have to cook it for. So you could boil eggs in there. You can make a frittata. You could make a soup in half the time. One of my favorite things to do is throw a couple frozen chicken breasts in there with a half a cup of broth, cook it, and then put in my KitchenAid mixer and shred it up. And I can do all kinds of things with shredded chicken. So I'm a busy mom with kids, so I don't have a whole lot of time to meal prep. I'll be the first to admit that, but things like that can really help the process become a little bit easier. Also consider cooking extra portions. So maybe that leftover baked chicken can turn into a chicken salad the next day, or some chicken tacos. Also, just keeping some pre-washed, chopped, or sauteed vegetables in the fridge at eye level that you could easily grab some of those maybe sauteed veggies and throw them in your omelet in the morning. Maybe you can throw some of those chopped up vegetables onto your salad or your stir fry. Maybe you just have some raw vegetables that you add to a wrap for an easy lunch idea as well. And then sheet pan meals. If you've never made a sheet pan meal, I definitely encourage you to jump on the bandwagon with that. Basically, you pick any protein you want, you put that on a pan, you throw any vegetables chopped up that you want on there, and then you just roast it in the oven. And a lot of people that don't like vegetables do like the roasted vegetables a little bit more. It can almost take out the metallic flavor if that's something that you notice with vegetables. So super easy options for those meals at home. Also, if you're a smoothie person, some people don't like to eat, food first thing in the morning. So a smoothie might be a better option to get that breakfast in versus skip it. You can make ahead some smoothie packs. So take a quart bag, throw some leafy greens, maybe throw some spinach in there, maybe a cup of frozen mixed berries, maybe some chopped up avocado. Ziploc that shut, throw them in the freezer, and then when it's smoothie time, you throw that into the blender, maybe grab some protein powder or some yogurt and milk, and you've got your smoothie ready to go. Maybe you cook and freeze some of those starches for later. So kind of that batch cooking method. So maybe you have some brown rice or some couscous or quinoa that you make in batches, and then freeze them a little, half a cup or cup measurements for an easy side dish to add to a meal. Maybe you've got those leftover steamed broccoli in the fridge going old. You could throw that in the blender, puree it, and add it to your spaghetti sauce, or maybe a soup or stew that you're making later on into the week to make it more nutrient dense for you. Or you might consider some of the different meal kits. HelloFresh, Blue Apron, things like that will arrive at your doorstep with all your ingredients. And there's some healthy options included in there too. If you're someone that wants to stay local, there's a lot of local Kansas City places doing these same type of meal kits as well. So you might check out the ones that are in your area. I wanted to kind of switch the pace here and talk a little bit about beverages. So there can be a lot of extra calories, carbohydrates in those beverages. So we're talking about regular soda, we're talking about your fruit juices, we're talking about sweet teas and lemonades and slushies, and even smoothies can be very high in carbohydrate and calories and sugar. So we always say kind of rethink that drink. If you're someone that's kind of skipping meals, but you're not really feeling hungry throughout the day, are you substituting those meals for some of those sugar calories? This graph is kind of interesting. On the far right side, you see back in 1955, McDonald's original fountain drink was 7 ounces, just a little guy. And then over the years, we can even get a 128-ounce Team Gulp at 7-Eleven, which I had never heard of. But that's a lot of fluid. And if you can imagine how much sugar is in that 128-ounce beverage, that's a lot. Also, so we want to watch out for these added sugars. And basically what added sugars are is sugar that's been added to food, kind of what it sounds like. So maybe that's that 3 tablespoons of sugar we're adding to our morning cup of coffee. And maybe it's different sugars and syrups that different manufacturing companies are adding to the food. The American Heart Association came out with some guidelines a few years ago for kind of the recommended upper limits, if you will, for added sugar per day. So for men, our goal is to stay less than 9 teaspoons of added sugars, and for women, about 6 teaspoons. Our little blurb at the bottom, you can see we're not doing too well with that. The average American is getting about 17 teaspoons. So we're a little bit high there. So kind of the foods that are going to contain a lot of these added sugars would be your candy, your cakes, your cookies, pies, donuts, ice cream, and then in beverage form, that soda, fruit drink, those energy drinks that are not sugar-free, and those different coffee beverages. This shows a little bit better idea too when we're looking at like the grams. So essentially coffee and water have 0 grams of sugar. I like to always talk about kind of the lemon lime soda. So think about that Mountain Dew in the bottom right-hand corner. So a 20-ounce bottle has 77 grams of sugar. So if we took that regular Mountain Dew and drank one on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so we drank one a day for 7 days, we could literally fill that to the brim full of sugar, and that's how much sugar we've just ingested in 1 week. So you can imagine what that's doing to our blood sugars, to our heart health. So that's why we always encourage you to kind of rethink that drink. Any questions with that? Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about mindful eating now. So there's kind of 2 different types of hunger. There's that emotional eating and that physical hunger. So emotional eating is basically when it comes on quickly, we crave a specific food, we go overboard, guilt follows immediately, right? And we're all guilty of being an emotional eater at times. And to a certain extent, emotional eating isn't troublesome. But if this is something that you're continuously doing, I do encourage you to kind of think about, what just happened that maybe led me to think about that certain food? Are we stressed about something? Was it something our child or spouse did? Is it the work stress? But usually there's something that brings us to that emotional eating. So our goal is really to gravitate toward the other side, which is that physical hunger. So physical hunger is something that builds up over several hours. We're open to a variety of food ideas. We stop when we're satisfied. We don't really have to think about feelings, especially not negative thoughts after we have that food. Okay. So what I like to refer to is the hunger fullness scale, of kind of how to figure out where you're at on that physical hunger scale. So if we think about our hunger on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is so empty, we feel like we're going to pass out, we need food pronto. And then on the opposite side, 10 is kind of that Thanksgiving sick feeling where we literally don't ever want to see food again in our life. And then that 5 would be neutral, okay? Our goal is really to key into about a 3 to 7 range, okay? So that 3 is, we're getting hungry, maybe some stomach rumbling, need to get some food in our belly, but we're not yet uncomfortable. And then that 7 is, once again, we're satisfied, but we're not uncomfortable. We could probably have a few more bites, but we're satisfied. Okay, by trying to stay within that 3 to 7 range, we're less likely to get to those extremes. Okay, because what happens if we get down to that 1? Are we so hungry that maybe it backfires to that 9 or 10? Do we maybe feel guilty then? So we say, well, we'll just kind of skip to the next skip the next meal, we get down to that 1 or 10 again, and it just keeps backfiring. So I always work with my patients, you know, if you need a snack, that's totally fine. Snacks are not a bad thing. If that holds you off, you know, till your next meal so you don't go overboard, that's perfectly fine, okay? So I encourage you to kind of mentally check in as you sit down to your next meal today. Kind of think about where you're at on this hunger scale. Halfway through, put that fork down, kind of reassess. And then once again, at the end of the meal, see if you can really stay within that 3 to 7. Okay. And a lot of times too, it does help if we kind of slow the pace at our meals as well. So we can give our brain a little bit of time to catch up to tell us when we're satisfied as well. All right, I wanted to finish today talking a little bit about exercise. I know Jackie mentioned that a little bit 2 weeks ago. So there's lots of different types of exercise. It doesn't mean that you have to go run around the block every single day of your life by any means. So kind of some different types is mobility exercise, aerobic, and strength. So we're going to talk a little bit about each type and kind of figure out if there's maybe one that you might gravitate towards or enjoy more. So when we talk about mobility exercise, this is generally something that we do at the beginning of a warm-up, maybe at the end of our warm-up or exercise. It includes generally some light stretching where you might hold that position or pose for about 10 seconds. And it really just kind of warms up the body, decreases that chance of injury. And it's kind of like a rubber band. You know, if you slowly kind of pull that rubber band, it gets a little bit more elastic versus you take a brand new rubber band and just go like this, it's probably going to snap. So this can be really helpful for range of motion. It can be great for balance, coordination, flexibility for sure. So something we can all improve on. And you can do this from your own home too, even in your bed. The aerobic exercise, so that's getting into some of that cardio. So basically this is increasing that heart rate for an extended period of time, okay? Lots of good benefits of this. This could be jumping in the swimming pool, getting on that stationary bike. Maybe we are a runner, maybe we enjoy playing soccer or pickleball. This can be really helpful for your heart. It kind of strengthens your heart and improves that cardiovascular system. So that might mean that it leads to lowering your blood pressure. It might increase that HDL, that heart healthy cholesterol, and help decrease that LDL, that lousy cholesterol. It can definitely help with blood sugar control. If you have asthma, it can help you breathe a little bit easier, and it can also have benefits on your sleep habits too. And then lastly, that strength training. So that is adding resistance. So that could be resistance in the form of some resistance bands. It could mean some dumbbells. It could mean those canned vegetables in your cupboard or some water bottles, or it could mean your own weight too. So maybe we're using our own weight to do squats, lunges, push-ups, pull-ups. That's strength training. Lots and lots of benefits to strength training. It can definitely help with lower back pain. It can also help with that balance and movement. Probably one of the most common ones is just it builds those stronger bones, and it can increase that muscle mass too, and then endurance. So it makes those activities of daily living easier to do. Also, unlike that cardio where we're burning calories only during that time we're doing that cardio exercise, with strength training, we're going to burn a little bit lower calories while we do it, but we're also going to continue to burn calories throughout the day. So it's increasing your metabolism, which is a good thing. Every decade, our metabolism slows and slows and slows, as does our muscle mass decrease. So strength training is always something I highly recommend for our patients. And a bonus, these can be completed from a seated chair too. So if you have joint pain, there's always ways to get around that. How much exercise? Well, the 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, we've got a goal of a minimum of 150 minutes a week of that moderate physical activity. Okay. They also encourage that muscle strengthening activity at least 2 times a week as well. So getting some of that strength in there too. So maybe that means we go for a walk 30 minutes 5 times a week, and we do some resistance bands twice a week. just know that any exercise works. Movement is movement. And I always encourage you to start small and build up. 3 minutes is better than 0 minutes. If you do have joint pain, focus on those low impact options. So check out the pool with tons of water aerobic classes. Maybe get on that stationary bike or even do those seated chair exercises. And slowly kind of work your way up and see if you can get to that 150 minutes per week. It'll definitely have a huge impact on your health. And some ways just to get extra steps. A lot of us, have the smartphones and watches and everything that is kind of a pedometer for us. Maybe consider just something simple as parking further away when you go to the grocery store or the department store. Maybe consider taking the stairs versus that elevator up 2 floors. Maybe during those TV commercials of your favorite show once a week, we march in place. That gets your heart rate up. We can even put our hands up in the air to get even more benefit. For those that might be working from home, maybe a desk peddler where you can get some extra movement in throughout your day. I've even had patients set their smartwatch for every hour that it beeps so they get up and walk for 5 minutes around their home or their workplace. Maybe consider using half of your lunch break to go for a walk. Or adding a block in that Outlook calendar just for that exercise. So put that block in there just like you would for a meeting. It's a meeting for yourself to get that physical activity in. I also wanted to just let you know that we do have a lot of exercise classes at North Kansas City Hospital. It's a 24/7 fitness center on the 3rd floor with access to the pool. On our 2nd floor, we have lots of different water classes. We've got some of the yoga, Pilates stuff going on, some of that core balance, kind of flexibility, mobility exercises that can all be found on our website, nkch.org. And also, I wanted to invite you to our total weight loss website too, where you can find 12 free 30-minute exercise segments. And they all kind of focus on that lower impact. So some of them are just seated in a chair. Some of them we use resistance bands or light dumbbells. And obviously you can break that 30-minute session into 3 10-minute sessions or however you want to go about that as well. So those are up and absolutely you are able to access those as well. I wanted to finish up today with any questions that you have from all the series that you've heard over the last few weeks. Yeah.
If you buy it at the counter where
It's fresh.
that's probably better than buying it in the carton.
It generally has a little less sodium in there. Or you can always choose like the low sodium options that are on the shelf too. But yeah, generally if you go to the meat counter, you're going to save a little bit of salt. Yep. Open this up. I just pushed chat, right? And anyone that is viewing online, feel free to use the chat to ask any questions that you might have as well. Have any of you guys found a certain tip or trick that has been spoken about in the past couple weeks that you've been trying to incorporate into your daily routine at home?
I'm gonna walk after dinner.
Okay.
You can walk 10 minutes after dinner. Try to do that.
Has that been pretty doable for you? Good. Yeah.
I bought a Smart Ones meal the other day.
Uh-huh.
I was doing not good, and the carbs on it were.
Yeah, those frozen entrees are difficult. And even from a few years ago, the amount of sodium that is in there, you used to find one that was maybe 400 or 500 milligrams, and now it's like 700, 800. So yeah, I will say some of the healthy choice ones out there, I feel like that's probably the best one we found in terms of like lower carb and lower-ish sodium. Yeah, they're hard to come by. Yeah, those labels are tricky for sure. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
Increasing my water intake, especially.
Yes. Yeah. Are we hungry? Is that head hunger? Are we dehydrated? Absolutely. I think we're all guilty of that for sure. Good. Have you noticed, do you feel a little bit better or anything? Good. Yeah, especially as we're going into the winter months, the colder winter months, we kind of forget about hydration as much as we do in the summertime with sweat loss. So definitely something to still keep up on for sure.